A Japanese news report that says Honda is considering moving some production from its plant in Alliston to the U.S. It's the latest in a series of automakers possibly moving production to the country in the wake of Donald Trump's trade war.
Honda announced late Tuesday it was halting production at most of its plants in the U.S. and Canada.
America's tariff war just backfired spectacularly, and Japan is striking back with a massive export shift that's reshaping the entire North American automotive landscape. Toyota is staring down a $9.5 billion profit loss this year, while Japan's economy contracted at a 1.8% annual pace for the first time in 6 quarters.
The faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
We are hearing from the big 3 U.S. car manufacturers, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, through the American Automotive Policy Council, which is calling this Japan deal at first glance a bad deal. And
so what happens when you corner one of the world's manufacturing giants with unpredictable trade policies?
President Trump touting his new trade deal with Japan, one of America's largest trading partners. The agreement sets the tariff rate at 15%, which is lower than the 24% rate Trump first sought to impose back in April. And of course, the 25% rate he threatened earlier this month.
The numbers tell a brutal story. Exports plunged 4.5% in the 3 months through September, and the damage extends far beyond spreadsheets. The U.S. now imposes a 15% tariff on nearly all Japanese imports, and even that reduction from the earlier 25% isn't enough to stop what's unfolding. When President Trump initiated these trade barriers, the stated goal was crystal clear: bring manufacturing jobs back to American soil and reduce dependence on foreign supply chains. I think we all know how that worked out.
But the big question is how automakers are going to be treated. We were talking earlier, the Japanese automakers, their stocks are soaring this morning. They're happy that there is a deal. But what tariff rate will they be subject to? Because
here's what Washington miscalculated. Japanese automakers aren't retreating, they're repositioning. Instead of absorbing indefinite losses or begging for exemptions, they're executing a strategic pivot that's reshaping North American manufacturing geography. The relocation isn't dramatic or chaotic. It's methodical, calculated, and arguably more threatening to American interests than any trade war escalation could be.
remember, there's a blanket 25% tariff on foreign cars. So will they be subject to the 25% or will they be subject to the 15% tariff rate?
That's going to be a key question, especially as we see Japanese automakers buoyed by this news. But it's earnings season here in the U.S., and U.S. automakers are having an opposite reaction, at least in their earnings filings.
Think about the automotive industry's role in both economies. For Japan, vehicles make up more than a quarter of exports headed for the U.S., and roughly 8% of jobs tied directly to the auto sector. For America, Japanese automakers employ hundreds of thousands of workers across multiple states. Both sides have massive stakes in this game, yet only one side seems to be playing chess while the other plays checkers.
Well, General Motors is going to be okay. They still made plenty of money, but they made less money than they would have if these tariffs weren't in place. I mean, it's wealth destruction.
The economic contraction came as businesses ramped up exports to beat the tariffs, temporarily inflating earlier data before the inevitable crash. That rush and collapse pattern reveals something critical. Companies knew what was coming and prepared accordingly. They front-loaded shipments, stockpiled inventory, and simultaneously began moving operations to locations where tariff walls don't exist. Japan's government response has been equally telling. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's administration is preparing a stimulus package exceeding $110 billion to cushion the blow and prevent a full-scale recession. That's not a minor intervention. It's a massive fiscal deployment designed to keep the economy stable, while manufacturers execute their long-term adjustments. Meanwhile, the Bank of Japan maintains its benchmark interest rate at 0.5%, caught between inflation pressures and economic fragility.
Japan doesn't import many U.S. vehicles. Last year it was around 16,000. where we take in $40 billion of their imports. So, even if you say 15% to 15%, it's still not a good deal for us.
But here's where the real shift happens. While Japan's domestic economy absorbs the punch, its manufacturers are quietly relocating to a place where American tariffs don't apply, where trade agreements remain stable, and where political predictability trumps policy chaos. That place is Canada.
We're here at Cambridge, the Toyota facility, introducing the production of the RAV4.
For more than 30 years, Toyota has played an integral role in Ontario's auto industry.
The migration north isn't new. It's an acceleration of patterns established decades ago. Honda became the first Japanese automaker to build vehicles in Canada in 1986, followed by Toyota in 1988. What started as strategic diversification has transformed into an industrial anchor. In 2018, Toyota and Honda together accounted for 47% of all Canadian-made light vehicles, and that percentage has only grown.
Our government was elected on a promise to create great paying jobs right across Ontario, here in the automotive sector, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Ontario specifically has become the epicenter of this shift. Toyota's Cambridge and Woodstock plants employ about 8,000 people and produce more than 500,000 vehicles annually. These aren't satellite facilities or token operations. They're manufacturing powerhouses that rival anything in the American Midwest. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, hit that subscribe button to stay informed on how global trade shifts are reshaping industries.
We're only 5 to 6% of the cost of the vehicle. And when you think about that and the high tariffs that you have to pay, it just makes more sense to bring the work back. So we're advocating for the administration to make better deals with China, especially, and Mexico.
Recent announcements confirm the acceleration. Honda decided to make the next Civic Hybrid in Ohio rather than Mexico and is increasing CR-V production in Ohio. At first glance, that sounds like a win for American manufacturing. But read the fine print. Honda committed to maintaining production volumes in Canada, suggesting Honda Ontario will be allocated new export markets. Translation: they're not reducing Canadian operations. They're simply redistributing which markets each facility serves.
We want the world to know what Toyota knows. My favorite line, and it's not just a slogan, my friends, I always say, Ontario is open for jobs and open for business.
And
Toyota follows a similar pattern. The company announced it's increasing RAV4 production in the U.S., which again sounds positive for American workers. Yet Toyota plans to maintain its output levels in Canada despite this switch. The Canadian plants aren't shrinking. They're pivoting to serve different markets where tariff barriers don't exist. The underlying economics make perfect sense from a corporate perspective. Through the CPTP free trade framework, Ottawa maintains open trade with Japan, bypassing the barriers that now dominate U.S. policy. Canada serves as a tariff-free bridge, allowing Japanese manufacturers to access North American markets without getting caught in crossfire every time a new policy tweet drops from Washington.
The big three automakers are not happy. They say a deal that charges lower tariffs on Japanese imports than on North American cars with high American content is a bad deal.
I think the most damaging aspect isn't the immediate economic hit. It's the erosion of trust. Multinational corporations plan investments decades in advance. They need predictability, regulatory stability, and confidence that the rules won't change overnight. When Washington implements tariffs, then reduces them, then threatens to increase them again, the message to corporate boardrooms is clear. America has become an unreliable partner. Major automakers are absorbing tariffs to keep car costs steady and avoid scaring off consumers, at least in the short term. But absorption has limits. Honda expects tariffs to cost roughly $3 billion in profits this year, while Nissan projects a $2 billion hit. Those aren't sustainable losses. Eventually, Companies must either pass costs to consumers, reduce operations, or relocate to more favorable environments.
It's great news for our skilled workforce. It's great news for the auto sector here in Ontario and in Canada. We've got beautiful vehicles that people want to buy that are going to be produced for years to come here in Cambridge. It's fantastic news.
The historical parallel is impossible to ignore. In the early 1980s, President Ronald Reagan introduced voluntary export restraints on Japanese vehicles, effectively acting like a 60% tariff. Japan's response wasn't to fight or retreat, it was to establish massive plants in Ontario. Honda opened in 1984, Toyota in 1986, transforming Canada into what economists called North America's industrial backdoor. 4 decades later, the exact same pattern is repeating. In the 1980s, Federal Industry Minister Ed Lumley targeted Japanese automakers with aggressive recruitment strategies that worked spectacularly. Toyota and Honda were the top 2 auto producers in Ontario in 2023, and early estimates suggest they'll account for 2/3 of Canadian production in 2024. Canada learned to play the long game while America oscillates between protectionism and free trade depending on who's in office.
Our government is getting Ontario back on track, and the best way we can strengthen the auto industry is to continue cutting red tape and reducing business costs. And that's exactly what we're doing.
The ripple effects extend beyond automotive assembly. There are 64 Japanese auto parts manufacturers in Canada, most located in Ontario, creating an ecosystem that supports the primary manufacturers. When a Toyota plant expands, suppliers follow. When Honda announces new models, parts manufacturers invest in capacity. This clustering effect generates momentum that becomes self-reinforcing. European and South Korean automakers are watching and learning. Vehicles made outside North America accounted for 34% of Canadian monthly vehicle sales in August, up from 28.8% in March, the month before U.S. tariffs kicked in. That's not coincidence. It's strategic repositioning by manufacturers worldwide who've concluded that the American market, while lucrative, isn't worth the regulatory chaos.
Big 3 salaries come from profit sharing. And when you look at Stellantis, who reported negative numbers, they're not going to receive that strong profit sharing check next year. So that plays into it as well.
Consumer impacts are already visible. The average transaction price for a new vehicle sits near record $48,039, almost $10,000 more than in 2019. Tariffs will push those prices higher, potentially by $3,000 to $6,000 per vehicle, depending on where it's built. Meanwhile, dealers reduce incentives, manufacturers stockpile inventory, and buyers face a perfect storm of rising costs and limited supply. I think the fundamental miscalculation stems from viewing trade as a zero-sum game where one country wins and another loses. Global manufacturing doesn't work that way anymore. Supply chains cross borders 6 or 7 times before final assembly. A Made in America vehicle might have engines from Mexico, transmissions from Canada, electronics from Asia, and raw materials from dozens of countries. Tariffs don't simplify that complexity. They just add cost at every border crossing.
Same day today, Honda joined government officials by pouring cold water on the report out of Japan. Though for auto workers, this just adds to the uncertainty for an entire industry that has been teetering since Trump's auto tariffs were announced.
The migration of manufacturing to Canada represents more than corporate maneuvering. It's a referendum on American policy reliability. When companies choose where to invest billions in new facilities, they're making 20 to 30-year commitments. Those decisions depend on regulatory stability, trade certainty, and political predictability. Right now, Canada offers all 3 while America offers volatility. What makes this situation particularly frustrating is that it was entirely predictable. Every economic analysis of tariff impacts warned that companies would respond by relocating production, not by accepting permanent cost increases. Every historical example showed the same pattern, yet policy proceeded anyway, apparently expecting different results this time.
These are the types of jobs that feed families, pay the mortgage, put kids through school.
Japan's strategic response to American tariffs isn't confrontational or dramatic. There are no angry speeches, no retaliatory tariff volleys, no diplomatic breakdowns, just quiet, methodical movement of investments, operations, and future plans to locations where the rules stay consistent. That measured response might be more damaging than any aggressive retaliation could be, because it's permanent. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on whether these tariff policies are achieving their intended goals or creating more problems than they solve.